is the worst podcast I've ever been on.
These guys are shit. It's true. It's true. This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Hard-Traveling Fanboys, 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 Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a very, very, very special edition. And I mean that for once. For once, you can trust the voice coming out of these speakers to you. That noise that you just heard were the crickets for our podcast. And it's appropriate that we should hear those crickets because, Nick, I am not being hyperbolic when I say this is a very special episode of the Hard-Traveling Fanboys, am I not?
Yeah, I think it'll give most of our listeners cause for celebration, probably.
Most of our listeners and all of our social media followers. Because...
all of your social media followers.
That's true.
We're gonna be shooting tonight, baby.
Oh, boy. We got to be careful how much we shoot. So, in all seriousness, tonight is the 200th episode of the Hard-Traveling Fanboys, which has been the longest running weekly episodic comic book podcast in all of Place to Be Nation. So, what is so special about this occasion? Why are we speaking in riddles? Why are we being so somber and so...
Why have we made not so vague allusions for the last 2 months on the show?
Why have we pretty much come out flat out and said that number 200 was a big landmark for us for some time now? The answer is that for the time being, this is the final episode of the Hard-Traveling Fanboys. Now, is this goodbye? Perhaps, could be. We don't know. It could be see you later. We don't know. All's that I know.
Go ahead. I know you're itching to drop it. Drop the line, Greg. Go ahead.
Saying finally the Hard-Traveling Fanboys are going.
No, I was going to say the only thing for sure about the Hard-Traveling Fanboys is that nothing's for sure.
That's true.
That's right.
That's great. See, I don't know how I forgot that. One of my favorite lines. That's how fatigued I've become, Nick. But number 200, this is a big, before we get to the whys and the wherefores and the where do we go from here's, we wanted to take a look back. That's right. We're going to go very thoroughly up our own keisters. We're going to bury ourselves up into our innards somewhere in the colon area and talk
because it's our show. So
it's our show, and we're going to look back on it. We're going to talk about our memories, how this show came to be, what is special about 200 to us, and then we're going to tell you what we'll be doing next and what the future of our show is. So, I guess 200. What does that number represent? Well, for us, it's a big number, an arbitrary number, granted, but a number that represents commitment because, quite honestly, and putting in all our cards out on the table, both of us, I think I'm speaking for you as well, Nick, have been pretty tired of doing the show for about a year now, I would say.
Not quite a year for me, probably closer to maybe 6 months or so, but I felt like your commitment to it was waning there for a little while, and then we kind of hashed some stuff out privately, and it picked back up, and then I think about that time that it picked back up, mine kind of dropped out, and so at that point it was fuck it.
Yeah. It kind of just reached a point where I had been feeling this way for some time, and like Nick said, I kind of got my energy back a little bit, and then he lost his, and then we kind of both mutually got to a point where we were just kind of done with it. It was taking a lot of energy out of us, and
I feel like that could probably, I mean, like, not to say every show we've done for the last year has been bad, because I think there have been some really good ones.
No, I think
over
for
the
instance
last year,
the
but
Jason Ayers episode was great.
Yeah, but I think people who have listened to the show since the beginning, the few of you that there are, I think most of you would agree that it was better the first 3 years than it was the last year.
Yeah, certainly we felt that way on the recording end. It's funny because we finally fixed our audio quality issues in the last year, and it came after our actual quality was gone.
Was gone. Yeah, we were creatively bankrupt at that point.
Yes, it's a shame that we didn't fix our problems earlier in the podcast tenure, but nonetheless, we've had a good run, and I think for us, even though we started feeling this way maybe a year ago, for me, for us, it was about getting to a finish line, and we set 200 mutually as an agreed upon finish line that would feel like we accomplished something. Because candidly, I always felt like we left something on the table with the column because we didn't finish what we started. If that makes sense,
right?
We
never really discussed what our strategy was long term. We kind of were just doing them, and then life got in the way.
Yeah.
In the middle of us doing the column, my oldest daughter was born. And then that made the column become kind of intermittent and infrequent. And then my second daughter was born, and it made the column become non-existent, essentially. And my timeline could be that off of that. You actually have some of the stats pulled up. I think when was our first published piece, column-wise? July of 2013?
July of 2013, yep. And that's when we started.
And then our first episode of this podcast?
Our first episode of this podcast was May of 2016. May 1st, 2016.
So yeah, that works out kind of somewhat right in that, the birth of my second daughter just pretty much killed any free time we had to do the column, because dating back, if we want to dial it all the way back, when Place to Be Nation was in its infancy, it had been around as a website, and obviously the podcast, and then the website came along. And they wanted to start branching out into some comics content. Todd Weber, the illustrious manager, had kind of been approached and asked if he knew some guys who might be interested. And he reached out to you and then subsequently to me as well. And I think for both of us, because we were writing at the time for low paying, poverty level newspaper jobs, the idea of coming home every day and writing something on our own was kind of insufferable.
Yes, it was a non-starter, really.
It was a non-starter. And so we kind of came up with this idea of well, what if we collaborated on something? And then we, that spitballed into, what if it could just be kind of conversational, much like the nature of our conversations in everyday life, just kind of rambling or whatever. And that's the format we wound up going with for the column, not understanding at the time it was going to be more work to do it that way than it would have been for us each to just write something independently of one another. But despite that, I think you and I both agree that it produced some really good results.
Yeah, I agree. I actually, even going back and looking now, I'm actually very impressed by those columns. I thought we had a really unique column on the website. I thought we had a very good conversational setup put up there. And full candor, I actually had started writing a book along these lines with another mutual friend of ours, maybe a year or two before this, and we gave up on it quickly because it was a lot of time and effort to do, more than we expected it to be. And that was kind of what was unfortunate to me about the column, because I agree. I thought we were putting out really good stuff for the most part in the column, but it was so time consuming. And for us at that time,
especially on the back end of it, the formatting, I remember was a nightmare.
It was a nightmare, yep.
At that point we were responsible for loading all the formatting into the website itself, which that wasn't as big a pain, but if we ever wanted to go super text heavy with anything, getting all the images and that kind of stuff. So it was, and it's not to say that the website itself was difficult to use, more so that we were undereducated, and above all else, one thing that we have to be honest, if that's the idea of the show, of this episode, is there are few things that you and I both mutually love doing more than we love doing nothing.
Yes.
Nothing is one of my favorite things.
Nothing might be my favorite thing in the world at this point.
Yes.
There's just something to be appreciated about the joy of nothingness.
The number one reason why I find Office Space to be one of the most relatable comedies of all time is not because of the monotony of working in an office, which my eyes have been open to that in the last 5 years for sure. But this man is asked if he had $1 million, what would he do with $1 million? And he says, I would do nothing. I would sit on my ass all day long and do nothing. And I've never related to someone more than I related to that character.
It's true.
In Office Space.
It's true. I mean, it's ultimately true. If I'm being honest with myself, that's what I would do. I would probably do the same thing I do now, except more of in my free time, except more of it because I'd have money.
Right.
And I wouldn't have to go to work.
Right.
But no, it's the other thing is that, touching on your writing aspect earlier, people just don't understand how much you write if you write for a smaller newspaper. They just don't get it, because literally every waking moment of your working life, you were writing something.
Right.
And usually taking photos, editing.
Or researching to write something.
Yep.
But you are in the writing process.
You are in the writing process at all times on something. So when you get home, it is awful, awful hard to do that writing. So candidly, Nick, a lot of my writing was done at work for the column. So I would take time out,
as well.
From doing what we were doing, and we would do it. There were probably better ways of doing it than what we did, but we would do it through Facebook chat, and then copy and paste the text from our Facebook chat into a document, put the HTML coding in, and then paste that into WordPress to post it up on the website. So that went on for a while, but we eventually gave up, as Nick said. And I think when we started this column in 2016. When we started the podcast in 2016, we had done a couple of kind of sample podcasts before that were sort of collaborations with our group. And to say that I was skeptical of our ability to do a weekly podcast would be an understatement, Nick. After those,
well, I mean, again, let's speak in full candor here. We, going back to the column, had kind of the same rotational ideas. Like each week had a different theme, and on fifth weeks we would do giant size. And for the first little while, we had great giant size ideas for the column, something that would become a theme. And then after a while, we ran out of ideas. And so I at one point said, well, how about, let's just do a podcast as the giant size. And so we did that, and we did several of them. And in full disclosure, they all turned into drunken, incoherent messes. The Green Lantern show in particular is one of the most unlistenable things that has ever been produced on this website. And not to throw stones or anything, but that's covering a lot of fucking ground.
Yes.
And
it was the Between the Sheets of Green Lantern podcasts, except everybody was drunk.
Except for Greg. And so, and literally our early podcasts that were technically Hard-Traveling Fanboys podcasts, but we don't count in the numbering for some reason. They were all drunken, incoherent messes. And so
3 words.
When
Orange Lantern Oath.
Orange Lantern Oath, absolutely. And so 2016 rolls around, and written content for the site is drying up in general. There was a brief effort to kind of try and bring it back, and we had been asked to think about bringing the column back, and we talked about it for a little bit, and we kind of made the decision that we didn't really want to do it, but we wanted to do something because we did miss having some sort of creative outlet. And I don't remember, what exactly sparked it, but basically the idea was, and again, this is probably more than people care to know, but like Greg and I, not every day, but 90% of our work days, we talk to each other on the phone for an hour almost every day at lunch. And that may be a bit odd to some, but whatever. It's just that's how we handle our relationship. And so, and those conversations are often rambling and incoherent and have no real point to them. And for some reason we thought, well, what if we could just do that as a podcast? But trying to tie it back to the original column, we wanted to do it through the comic book lens, and thus that was kind of the genesis of us doing the column as a podcast, because the idea was, why are we writing out a conversation when we could just have a conversation?
Yes, it was the genesis, and both of our hairlines were turning us into Phil Collins on a rapid basis in real life. But yes, that's pretty much how I recall it as well. We had the same thought process of this will give us something that will take less time investment, and something that,
and it did.
Yeah,
and
something
in full disclosure, I mean, like,
yeah,
even near the end when the podcast became more work than we wanted it to, it was still less work than doing the column, in my memory anyway.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And so we kind of took off, and I was skeptical. Nick can remember this. I was skeptical because I was like, I do not want to I do not want to have to be the ringleader for a circus, as I was in some of those early podcasts. But with it just being the two of us, for the most part, it worked out. And so we kind of hit the groove coming out of the gates a little bit. I thought we found our voice pretty quickly with what we were trying to do, and I thought we did a good job pretty quickly of establishing an identity. We were just ourselves, like you said. We were for the most part taking our daily phone conversations and translating them to podcast form, and I think that's what made the show click in the early days with people, is that it did come off like two friends talking to each other like they would in everyday conversation. We would rag on each other, joke on each other, yell at each other, and then turn right back around and do comedy bits, with each other. So it's and that's kind of how our conversations are in real life, like all the time. We can go from shouting to each other about football to a second later mutually laughing about some guy that looks like the Kingpin that we just saw.
Yeah, we're pretty good at, like, with rare exceptions. I mean, very rare exceptions throughout our friendship. You and I are both pretty good about, like, just letting shit go.
Yeah.
There have been a couple of periods, mostly my fault, where that wasn't the case. But other than those isolated incidents, which have happened years ago at this point, we've never really, like, we see so many of our friends who have these, beefs with one another, or the silent tension, and I'm always thankful that that's never really been a thing for us.
Yeah, it's life's too short for all that stuff. So, plus my attention span's too short for all that stuff. I forget about what we talked about 10 minutes earlier. Even on the podcast, I've done that before. Anybody that's listened can tell you that. I'll have forgotten what we talked about just in the previous segment. But that's just the nature of aging. As I am one step closer to dementia, it's something, really something probably people have picked up on if they followed the podcast from the beginning, is the gradual mental decline of Greg Phillips. And it's truly fascinating to me, going back and listening to some of my earlier periods when I did a much better job of being the ringleader and had a lot fewer uhs and stuff like that. So anyway, but yeah, so we did the podcast, and we started going in that direction, and pretty quickly we realized, okay, we can do this. We can hit this weekly deadline. And then it became like, what, we want to stick with this. We want to stick by this. And I can't remember at what point it was.
Because I think both of us have a tendency.
Yes.
And I know, look no further than my creative output at PlaceToBeNation.com as an example of, like, we're notorious. I think this is true of a lot of people, not just us, but we're notorious for starting creative endeavors and never really finishing them. And, any ending to any kind of weekly effort, podcast or column or otherwise, is going to be kind of arbitrary. You're not going to, like, it's not like we were telling one story from beginning to end, so it's not like there's a true creative end to it. But, the column fell apart because of laziness and inconsistency on our part. And I think we both kind of didn't want that to happen to the podcast, that if we started to burn out or whatever, we didn't want to just suddenly stop doing it. We kind of wanted to bring it to a more, I don't know, graceful end, I guess, if that's the right term for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And like, for me, it was about setting a goal and getting there, because like you said, I have started a billion creative projects in my time, and I've never finished any of them. I've tried to write novels. I've tried to write screenplays. I've tried to do wrestling columns, and I've never finished them. I've never stuck with it and actually done it. And this was one that I was like, by God, I'm going to stick by this and I'm going to do it. And so for the last year, that's what it's been about for me. It's about we're going to keep the streak alive. We're not going to, and for the record, we never missed a week of production. Not once. Not ever.
Nope.
And that was big for me personally because I set a goal and I stuck by it and I did it. And believe me, there were weeks when both of us didn't want to do it. And there were weeks where we admittedly phoned it in, where we put in, 30 minutes.
But we told
you up front about it. Yeah, we were always transparent about that. So I'm proud of the fact that we set a goal and we accomplished it. And and
we have to, and I have to clarify, we set this goal within the last year, but after the first year, when we were 50 episodes in, even 100 episodes in, we didn't really feel like there was an end in sight. We felt like we could do this indefinitely. Really.
Mm-hmm.
It was because in the early days, and what we always said to each other was, as long as it's more fun than it is work, we'll do it. And when it starts to feel like work, that's when we need to reconsider it. And I don't know. I mean, there were probably a variety of factors that I don't know we really want to get into, but when it started to feel like work was, like you said, maybe a year ago. And then it kind of turned around for a little while. And then I almost wonder if that wasn't just us trying to will it into turning it around.
Right.
Because then shortly it was back to feeling like work again.
Yeah. And the feeling, what's that classic, one of the classic lines from The Dark Knight of, if you're good at something, never do it for free. and so
not that we were
good at it, but in this case, it was just if you're going to work, don't do it for free. So, and not that I'm suggesting we should have been paid for it. It was feeling like work, and I was like, man, I got to do work all day long. I don't want to come home and do more work. So it was starting to feel that way. And let's talk about some of the reasons that come down to it on the macro scale. Actually coincides with the very fun foundation of the show, which is comics. So this show was started because of our mutual love of comic books. And it's a love that we both have shared for a long time. You can go back, by the way, and listen to our very first episode to hear all about our secret origin of how we became comic book fans. And that's
detailed in written form that was one of our first column, actually.
Yep.
Was our Secret Origins Part 1. Yep. That was back in, like we said, July of 2013. But like you're saying, you go back and listen to the early episodes of the show, of the podcast, we were both current for the most part on our comic books. We were actively following, I was following more Marvel than you were, but you were at least tangentially aware of the goings on in the Marvel universe. We could talk modern Big Two comics without any issue. I mean, with some level of depth.
And we had passion.
I think part of that is because what now?
And we had passion about those issues.
Yeah, we did. And part of that is because at the time in 2016, DC in particular was enjoying what we both thought was arguably the greatest creative period of our adult lives. Now, yes, you had individual series prior to that, like Jeff Johns' Green Lantern, that was better than anything Rebirth was putting out. But in terms of the entire company from top to bottom, firing on all cylinders and feeling like it had a clear direction, I don't think there's ever been a higher zenith in the last 10 to 15 years for DC.
Especially,
and Marvel at the same time was starting to turn some things around. We were getting things that fans wanted. We were getting Peter Parker back in a featured role. Brian Michael Bendis was still pumping out quality Marvel stuff. Jason Aaron's Thor run was in the midst of what is an all-time classic run. It really felt like our passion for comics had never been higher.
And it felt like our passion and our investment in comics was being rewarded. I've never in my life been subscribed to as many comics as I was in the summer of 2016. It was really like a period of creative renaissance, or it felt refreshing as a fan to have all of this going on at once, Marvel and DC.
Yeah, and like you said, it really was. We felt rewarded. It felt refreshing. But in hindsight now, we probably could have seen this coming, because one of the things we talked about in our Secret Origins, episodes, is that we had both been through these boom periods and bust periods with comics. with all our interests, really. I mean, that's just the nature of interest. You kind of have hot periods and cold periods, and you have, certain interests that you hold on to even through the cold periods, which for both of us is, professional wrestling predominantly and sports and other things like that. But then you have other interests like comics that when the cold period comes, it's tough to manufacture or force that enthusiasm.
Right.
And I don't know when exactly that started to taper off for the comics themselves, but that definitely had an impact, because once that was gone, that's when it started. That's when I think the descent into feeling like work started, where we like I remember being like, oh God, I got to get through my weekly books just so I can talk about them on the podcast. And I wasn't even necessarily wanting to read them for enjoyment. I was just reading them because I felt like I had to have them done for the podcast.
Yep. I remember that time, and I obviously that period ended for me a lot quicker than it did for you because I got so far behind. But like,
right.
But yeah, it was the same for me. It was like I don't know when it happened exactly, but like I went from like, man, I can't wait to read all these comics to, well, I'll never get through all these comics. I'm just going to keep buying them for a while anyway because I'm doing the show. I'll eventually catch up one day. To, all right, it's time to start paring down my list. To fast forward to this past year, and like really the last 2 years. And I got one book left on my list, and it's Doomsday Clock, which comes out once every 5 months. So,
and I don't even have a pull list anymore.
So yeah, and Doomsday Clock's over now, so I don't have one. So like, and it got to that point where the only comics that I was reading were for our Longbook Hunters episodes. That's the only reason that I was so hell bent on keeping Longbook Hunters around, is because I didn't want to completely lose touch with comics, and so it forced us to read comics. And but yet both of us, for the monthly ongoings, somewhere around the end of 2018, I think, is probably where it began. Like midway through 2018 is where we just kind of started getting cut off from the ongoing comics world, and never really got hooked back in. And I don't know. It's hard to define it. We talked a little bit about this with Jason Ayers on our talking about his Secret Origins, and also a little bit on our Secret Origin episodes way back when, of the idea that I remembered when I was a kid and I was super into comics, and then when I stopped buying comics, it was almost like I had reached this aha point where I realized that I had basically been jerked around by the big two comic companies as a reader, because every storyline that I was invested in, they kind of pulled the rug out from under me and started all over again. And I reached a point where I was just kind of over that. And then I got back into it in college, and stayed into them off and on with wax and wane periods all the way up through the New 52 and all that stuff. And then Rebirth kind of was this spark for me that had this wave of creative energy in it. And then like at a certain point, I think I just felt the same way. I just felt like everything that I got invested in was having the rug pulled out from under me. And I think when we both started seeing the sort of the promise of Rebirth start to get squandered a little bit, and some of the things that we were told were going to happen in the aftermath of Rebirth sort of veering back into New 52 tropes and New 52 ideas, and almost taking it in different directions than what we had seen promised from a guy like Jeff Johns, who was kind of our guy. We, for better or worse, Jeff Johns is our guy. And so when he showed us these things that we wanted to see, we became disappointed when the creative follow-ups did not necessarily go in that direction. And we also started to see some things, for both of us had different things that drove us away. For me, it was, stuff like the Rick Grayson thing, stuff like Tom King's Batman run, which I didn't invest in very much, and then the seeing things like John Kent get aged up, and just little things that are really ultimately meaningless, but then Green Lantern kind of becoming whatever it's become. It was a very turbulent time there, and it felt like that excitement and that cohesion that we had felt after Rebirth kind of withered on the vine, and I think that affected the show. There's no question about that. When we're talking about a topic about which we're no longer that passionate, which I should be clear, we're still passionate about comics. We still love comics. We love these characters. We love these universes. But as far as
and I fully
expect.
Right, and I fully expect that in both our lifetimes, probably in both of our recent lifetimes, in the next, 5 to 10 years, there will come another boom period for this interest.
No doubt.
Because that's just the nature of all things. It's just, it became hard. I think for a little while after our interest in modern comics started to wane, our enthusiasm for doing the show was still high. But after a while, when we no longer had that fuel of modern comics, that's when the enthusiasm for doing the show also started to wane. So I would say for probably about 6 months after we kind of dropped off from weekly comics, we were still fine. We were still pumping ahead with doing the show. And then it kind of became hard to sustain that energy, for me anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you're right. I think one of the things that this hiatus hopefully is going to give us a chance to do is maybe start reading comics for fun again.
Right.
Which I haven't done in a long time. I have, other than Doomsday Clock, I have not picked up a comic and just read it for fun in a very long time. A longer time than people probably realize that have listened to the show. But it's something that I miss.
Which isn't to say we didn't like the things that we read for the show.
No, absolutely, yeah.
We honestly on this show we've liked more things than we've disliked that we've read.
Totally, and we've had a chance to read a lot of classic stories that we never read before. The Golden Age is a recent example that stands out of a book that we both loved that we had never read before and wouldn't have read if not for this show. So I think, I'm thankful that this show exposed me to a lot of books that I had heard about over the years, but never had a chance to really delve into, from Marvel, from DC, a few indie titles thrown in there as well, that I had never read and kind of grew to love as a result of this show. Some takes, alternate takes on characters that I thought were really cool that I had not experienced before. We read, we read Starman, which I thought was excellent. We read the Ultimates 1 and 2. We read, various takes on these characters over the years that have been some good, some bad, but a lot of really great ones thrown in. The Mist. I mean, gosh, Brubaker's Daredevil, which was mind-blowingly good and I had never read before. So yeah, there's just so many great books out there, and I'm thankful that we had a chance to visit those. Now I'm looking forward to just on my own delving through Marvel Unlimited. Right now, for instance, I'm reading the House of X series thanks to our buddy Jason, and working my way through that. And I'm looking forward to just doing things for fun and trying to rediscover things that excite me in comics, whether it be today or in the past. I want to go on DC Universe. There's so many classic runs that I want to read, and read them on my own timeline, because as you know, I'm a slow reader, and so sometimes it would be nerve-wracking trying to read these stories in time for our podcast. So I'm looking forward to being able to do that, and then also catching up on a lot of shows that I'm way behind on, because we're still going to be watching our stories every week, obviously, on CW. And
that's the weird thing is, as our passion for comics have waned, our passion for predominantly CW television has not waned.
Yes, which who would have thought that a decade ago?
I know.
So, and the same thing with the movies. I still, I'm going to watch. You've seen Harley Quinn. I have not. I'll be seeing that probably this weekend at some point. And
listen to you using the new title,
the new nomenclature. Harley Quinn.
The new nomenclature. Suckling at the DC corporate teat.
Would you like me to say the original name?
Yes.
Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. I mean, there's so much great content, and the hope is that we can rediscover our love of comics before we come back. If we come back, we don't know what we're doing yet. We're going to get to that in just a little bit. But an important thing to do right now before we talk about the future is to throw some thank yous out there, because we did not do this alone. This 200 episodes, we've had a lot of help along the way. And the first person before anyone else that we have to thank is the guy that has made all this happen from the beginning for us. Without him, there would be no Hard-Traveling Fanboys podcast. There would be no Place to Be Nation Pop. there would be nothing on this side of the feed without Todd Weber, the manager,
That's right.
who from day one supported us, has been our friend, and has put up with us putting in. We never missed a deadline, but we pushed it several
We were late.
times. You know, we
were late many times.
We put it. We always got it in the week, but there were nights where we put it in on a Friday night, and he had to get it edited and put out on a Saturday to save our streak. And he always did it. He always made time out of his day to edit this podcast. Any good sound quality that's come out of this show is due to Todd Weber. His edits, the music, the song, the Hard-Traveling Fanboys American Male song, which to me, I'm biased, but is the best thing that musically that we've ever had on this network, on either of the feeds. That was a Todd Weber original. That was a Todd Weber production that came out of a car ride in Orlando, Florida in 2017. So, which is one of my favorite memories of that WrestleMania week, by the way. So,
and isn't that beautiful that, like, I mean, we both knew Todd prior to doing the podcast, but I feel like doing the podcast has brought us closer together with Todd and, like, led to that beautiful moment, which then in kind led to the song. I mean, just, it's the way things have kind of grown naturally, you know, since we really started this entire endeavor.
It also made me feel a lot closer to both Buff Bagwell and Scotty Riggs. So
yes, absolutely.
You know, we've got that in common with them forever. So Todd Weber, thank you, truly from the bottom of our hearts, for always being there, for supporting us, for putting a ridiculous amount of time into a mostly thankless job. So he's the man. If you're out there, if there's any chance that anybody's listening to this that has connections to an actual to a professional podcasting job of editing or anything of that nature, reach out to Todd Weber
he's the man
at Todd Weber Guitar, and he's the guy you're looking for. Trust me. Along those lines, we have to thank JT Rosero and Scott Criscolo for allowing us to join the network back when we did. I mean, they were nothing but helpful to us, particularly back in the column days when we were just getting started. They showed support for us and helped us out to get started. Thanks for letting us be a part of the Place to Be Nation family and the Place to Be Nation pop feed existing. Thank you for that. And and for
throw Brad Warren in there. I know he's kind of moved on from his role at Place to Be Nation Pop since then, but in the early days he kind of was Place to Be Nation Pop. Like, he kind of started it off, got it launched, and was kind of over that imprint, I guess, to use a comic book terminology. And he was always supportive of us and has maintained that support, I think. Still active on the Place to Be Nation Comics Facebook page, which we kind of were behind spearheading. And, you know, he was a big supporter. And then later, Andy Atherton, since he came on board, same thing there.
Brad,
and of course Todd, like you said.
Brad and Andy, thanks to both of you for helping us out with scheduling, for helping us out with participation in the Place to Be Nation Comics group. Especially Brad has been a real help in that group with sparking some conversations, and, you know, his kind of discovering comics thread on there was really fun. You know, there's so many behind the scenes machinations of all these pop shows that folks probably will never know about, but a lot of people deserve thanks here. We got to, at the risk of being self-serving, thank our buddies that have been there for us from the beginning. Russell Sellers, one of our very earliest guests on the show, who went on to develop his own awesome shows on Place to Be Nation Pop, which hopefully will continue in the future. I know he's got several seasons planned with his show with Sam, 90 to Nothing. He and Todd going through the DC universe. The Sellers Points podcast, but Russell's been a guy that we could always call on if we needed a guest to come on and shoot the breeze with us. His passion for comics knows no rival. I think we would agree on that in our friends group. He is the most passionate, the most knowledgeable about comics. Always able to foster a great discussion. Particularly, I loved when we could have him in on our roundtable discussions about the Avengers Endgame, for instance, or whatever it may be, the Haffy Awards, back when those were a thing. A show title, which I gotta say, we'll get to that a little bit later on, but boy, am I proud of our show titles. If we did nothing else, Nick, we had some damn good show titles. All right, so Russell, thank you for always being a friend, always being, most importantly, and also always being a great guest on the Hard-Traveling Fanboys. and a great podcaster in your own right. Our good buddy David Sunday, who has been a guest various times on the Hard-Traveling Fanboys, went on to start his own great music podcast, Sunday Groove. Check that out on Place to Be Nation Pop. Jennifer Smith, one of our earliest guests on Hard-Traveling Fanboys, the original Hard-Traveling fangirl of the podcast. Thank you for always being there when we needed a guest to come on and foster discussion. Guys, there's so many people. I'm going to leave somebody out, and I hate to leave anybody out of this whole thing. Tim Capel, my God.
Oh, yeah.
Our buddy Tim. Always, what a fascinating individual in general. One of the other part of the triumvirate of my Talkin' WCW colleagues. But Tim is one of our earliest podcast guests from the very early days when we were doing those kind of test episodes that you referred to earlier, Nick, for our giant size editions. And Tim's always entertaining to listen to. A fountain of knowledge, a fountain of energy when it comes to talking about these things. He's just one of the most popular podcasters at all of Place 3 Nation, no doubt about that.
As he should
be, and a good friend of ours. We thank you, Tim. Who comes to mind, Nick? Who have we not talked about yet?
I'll catch a little heat for this, but and you may or may not agree. I got to say Ben Morse.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, people don't understand, just our Twitter, our mostly kayfabe Twitter beefs aside, how valuable a resource Ben has been behind the scenes to both give us advice on from a technical perspective as it relates to like the actual practice of podcasting, and also to push alternate opinions, because Greg and I, as often as you heard us disagree on the podcast, which was a lot of times, I would say for the most part, our tastes tend to run pretty similarly. And I think that's what, kind of enabled us to do the podcast, honestly, is we kind of tend to like the same kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben comes at it from an admittedly different perspective, and he was able often to push us to consider things another way.
Absolutely. And Ben, by the way, also has a new podcast out. Check him out.
Yep.
Check out at Ben J. Morris on Twitter. I will defend Ben Morris to the end of time. Yeah. He's always been nothing but kind to me. He's a great man. He's a great knowledgeable person about comics. I love our discussions with Ben. I hope to continue our discussions with Ben in the future, even if we're not on a podcast, because the guy's just sensational. I love talking to. Thank you, Ben, for always supporting the show, being a loyal listener to the show, participant in the show. We are very excited about your show, and hopefully we can reconnect in audio form in the near future. So, yeah, love Ben Morris. Love everything that he's done to help behind the scenes and on our airwaves on the rare occasions we've had a chance to have him on the podcast. It's always been fun. Jason Ayers, who I talked about earlier, WWE official, took time out of his day to talk to us about comics, really helped us out. We did some really good numbers with that episode. Another great guy who has been nothing but supportive of the show. And then all the people on Twitter that we've encountered that have kind of
that we've
been listeners
never
of the
met,
show.
but
Mike, Frank
the
Fran
of the world.
Yeah. Just so many cool people that we never would have encountered. Stephanie and Hal 2814. What
it was like Geek and Eats.
Geek and Eats, yes. These are the kind of people that we loved encountering on the show. People that we never would have expected. It made us feel good. Mitch Oken, absolutely. It made us feel good because we didn't know there were people like Mitch out there that were actually listening to our show. We thought it was just our friends listening to our show until we encountered people like this that became our friends through listening to the show. So thank all of you for any time. If anybody's ever invested even 5 minutes listening to our crap, we're very appreciative of that, because we never really thought that would happen. When we started the show, we thought we're here to entertain ourselves. That's all we really care about. We're just here to have a good time for ourselves. And
that never really changed, by the way.
No, but there was something cool about reading that we had an impact on somebody, that we had a chance, that we entertained somebody and took their mind off of. I mean, let's be completely honest here. Life's a big ball of shit. So it really is. It sucks.
Now, what are you trying to say, Greg?
That we were a brief respite. We were a we were a
What are you trying to say about life?
Life sucks. And then you die. And we were the fact reading some people that shockingly told us that we helped them take their mind off of really shitty things. That felt great. So if we had that impact at all, I'm very thankful and appreciative of you guys for giving us your time, and I'm thankful that we were able to do something that was worthwhile. So that was cool. And I think back to all of the shows that got launched on Pop post Hard-Traveling Fanboys, and I was very happy that we got to see these other people explore their passions, whether it be comic books, whether it be movies, whether it be music, whatever it was. We got to see a lot of cool people get a chance to, show what their passions are and why those are their passions, and show a lot of knowledge. Another guy, we haven't ever had him on the podcast, but I just want to shout him out because I love the guy to death. Andrew Reish, who's been a big part of PlayStation Pop with his sports podcast, his basketball podcasts. Another great guy. So really, genuinely, and I apologize that I know I'm leaving somebody out there. Andrew Garner, who's always been a loyal listener of the shows, great man as well. One of the best dudes you could ever meet in your life. But we're getting into kayfabe, real life mix-ups here. So real life, all of these people are awesome. But yes, the podcast reached a point where we just didn't feel the energy anymore. So we decided mutually several months ago that 200 was going to be it. That was our finish line. And as of now, we're calling it a hard-traveling hiatus. We're going to take some time off. We're gonna do a Thea, Nick. I just realized that. We're pulling a Thea. We're going to Cordo Maltese.
Yeah.
And we're gonna find ourselves, really.
We're gonna go find ourselves, which means a year from now, you can look forward to us having this same exact conversation with you.
Yep.
On a different version of the podcast.
On a different version of the podcast, and probably inadvertently murdering one of our friends, which leads to a 6-month-long investigation. So. We'll see how that goes. But no, we are indeed going to take a hiatus, and our plan, tentatively, is to eventually come back in some form, to bring the Hard-Traveling Fanboys podcast back in some form. What that form exactly is, we don't know. We do know one thing, that we're not going to be a strictly comic book podcast if we come back.
I think we know one other thing as well.
Yes, we do.
One other thing is we're not going to be weekly anymore.
No, we're not.
Unless you're listening to this and you're an owner of some podcast network and you're like, I sure would like to acquire a weekly show for which I will pay a hefty ransom. In that case, we're your guy.
Yeah, we'll do it next week. Shit on the hiatus. Listen, let me be very clear. My passion is for sale. My passion is absolute. You want my passion back? Hey. It's for sale. If anybody out there is listening, the highest bidder. Hey, we're listening.
We are the Winston Zedmore of podcasters. There's a steady paycheck in it. We'll believe anything you want. We'll chill anything you want.
Absolutely.
If the Church of Scientology wants us to get on the airwaves and talk about thetas and clears and all kinds of other ridiculous bullshit, if there's a paycheck involved, we will 100% do it.
Absolutely.
We'll do it tomorrow.
We'll in a heartbeat. Absolutely. What we're doing is we're not going weekly on a free podcast anymore. So, free. I should let you free for us. So, for you,
and we don't mean to we're not complaining like other people on PlayStation.
No, absolutely.
No one is really making money.
Nobody's making money on this thing. No, it's all for fun. But that's what I'm saying. For us, going weekly, it was such a huge time and energy investment by the end. And for me in particular, I've been feeling burnout for so long. I'm feeling like. The time, because it's not just the time of recording, it's the time of doing the research, of reading whatever it is, watching whatever it is, watching our other shows, reading our other books for the week back when that was a thing. And it adds up over time, and it beats you down and makes you feel like you've got no energy left, and like you can't do some of the things that you might want to do because you have to get this thing
especially
done.
If you're lazy like we are, because I know there are other people. There are people on this Place to Be Nation network. JT Rosero is an example. I mean, there are others who work full-time jobs, who have families, and who do like 7 shows a week or a month for the podcast, for the various podcast feeds. And like, that's great. And that's a level of creative output and creative passion that I know I can't match because I'm just too fucking lazy.
Yes, that's exactly the same. What very well said. Same for me. And so basically what we're saying, we would be willing to do weekly if like some pie in the sky thing happened where there was some opportunity that came up to make a little money on the side doing it. But other than that, outside of that, weekly ain't going to happen. So we don't know. We've talked about possibly doing a bi-weekly podcast. We've talked about possibly doing a monthly one. We don't know. But when we do come back, it's not going to be weekly and it's not going to be comic book centric. That doesn't mean we won't talk about comics.
Yeah, comics will always be a part
Right.
of whatever we do in the future. And like, let's be completely honest. We've talked about, taking this hiatus, and we've never said that we're taking a hiatus for this number of weeks or months or whatever. We're just going to kind of feel it out. And there's a very real possibility. It's kind of like Walking Dead. There's a very real possibility. When I stopped watching The Walking Dead, I assumed that I would miss it at some point, and then I just never did. And there's a possibility that maybe we stop doing this and just don't miss it at all and never come back. That very well could happen. I don't think it will. I think at some point we're gonna, something will happen to spark our interest or spark our passion again, and we'll be back talking about something. But the idea that we've kind of bandied around, if and when we decide to come back, is going back to the very concept of the show from the beginning, which was bringing our everyday conversations to the podcast. And our everyday conversations rarely, if ever, focus entirely on comics. So in the future, maybe the podcast will interest you, maybe it won't. It'll probably be something more of a variety type show where we talk a little sports, we talk a little wrestling, we talk movies that aren't comic book related. I mean, I know we got pretty damn good reviews, I have to say. And one of our discussions from the last 6 months I'm most proud of is our impromptu Star Wars discussion from a few weeks back, from a couple of months back. And that has nothing to do with comics.
Right.
We're probably going to do more stuff like that.
Yeah, and since it is a variety show, maybe some singing, some dancing. You never know.
Mm-hmm. Like the Honky Tonk Man says, I can't sing and I can't dance, but I can make romance. Uh-huh.
But yeah, so I mean, what can you expect in the future from the Hard-Traveling Fanboys? Possibly nothing. Like Nick said, there's a very real chance that we never come back. But if we do come back, more open-ended. I think less in the segmented version that we kind of have done for a while now. More freewheeling, more open, and I think another thing that there were a couple of ideas we started near the end that I really liked. I really liked that idea of interviewing cool people and getting their background stories into comics. I think that was cool because both of us come from a newspaper background, so it's kind of nice to flex those interviewing muscles a little bit. And then I thought the kind of rebooking bad comic book movies is a good idea. I think you would probably agree with this, Nick. I don't think we ever really settled into a groove on that as far as what it can be. But I think the nugget of an idea is there for something. Rebooking bad comic book movies. We can explore that again in the future. And then one thing that I told Nick, if we ever do come back, I would like to, in some form, keep the Longbook Hunters around just because I do feel loyalty to comics in some regard, and it keeps us reading some of these classic comics, and it gives us more time to do that too. So yeah, we'll talk more about that in the future. But like Nick said, much more open, much more freewheeling. And the other thing is that I wanted to tell people while they're listening here, if they are still listening, is keep supporting these other shows. There's so many great shows out there. Russell and Todd are doing a hell of a job talking about the comings and goings of the DC universe. David is telling you all about the great music that's out there. Tim and Jenny are doing their thing. There's all kinds of great shows out there to listen to. Give them a shot, and
not the least of which, Greg, by the way, is looking forward,
looking back. And all these shows on the network, give them a listen and follow these shows where they may go. Who knows what the future holds.
And don't forget over on the wrestling feed, there's also You Don't Know Billy Jack.
There sure is. So that gets me back. So let's take a moment, Nick, to talk about some of the things that let's talk about ourselves for a minute, shall we? We've thanked enough people.
We haven't done enough of that tonight.
We've kissed other people's asses. Let's kiss our own. How about these show titles? My God, some of which go back to the column days. Hard-Traveling Fanboys. That's some brilliant shit right there. Okay, pal?
That's pretty good.
The Longbook Hunters.
That was pretty. We were pretty proud of it.
The Longbook Hunters, I mean, that's good shit.
Yep.
That's good shit.
Tying into, because it all tied back to the Hard-Traveling Fanboys thing, you know?
Yeah. Damn right it does.
The Rundown, which we openly stole from a not that great action film starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, ding us for that one if you will. But it is what it is.
What it is. Reading and watching.
Reading and watching. Is it the most original thing?
Come on.
No.
What about the Wrestling Minute?
There you go.
Who else on Place to Be Nation has ever given you a ho-ho loon ticker?
Oh, no one. No one ever will. That's
and no one ever will. No one ever
what will become
should.
of the ticker during this hiatus? We shouldn't have.
But we did.
We shouldn't have done half the things we did.
No, we shouldn't have done Jim Ross singing popular music hits for the better part of 2 years.
I feel like that is going to be, if anything from this podcast lives on, I feel like that is our legacy, for better or for worse.
My God. But no, we fought hard on some of these. We went back and forth on some of these titles for things, for shows that we did. Fix It or Nix It, which was really a Todd Weber joint more than anything else. We really went back and forth on what would be a good idea for a lot of these ideas in the early going, and I thought we did we were pretty good. Pretty good.
Hard Travelers for Hire was a good title.
Yes,
I thought that was a really good title.
Yeah. Hard Travelers for Hire. That was a Nick joint. Very well done. And was a successful series, by the way. Maybe our most successful series.
I think that might be, in terms of the ongoing series, I think that was probably my favorite that we did.
Yeah, it was, and it's one that had a natural end, and that we saw it through the end. And culminated.
And it opened up into great discussion, because you and I could both approach it from a point of, we both like the movie, so let's take it from a, we could have a debate, a friendly debate, like we said, that would go from, we could be yelling at each other to just joking with each other in the same, span of a minute.
And it also gave the show some of our best guests that we've had.
Yes.
Throughout the tenure of that show, and who would have thought we would have gotten the response that we did when we had our final polls,
Right.
We had so many people that submitted lists to that, and that was really fun, and again made us feel very engaged. So, at this point we're just rambling. But what are some of the things that what do you have a favorite episode? Excuse me. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Oh, the studio's dusty today, Nick. But do you have any favorite episodes that we did that you think back on? I mean, obviously Hard Travelers for Hire in general.
Yeah, pretty much all of Hard Travelers for Hire, but in particular like the Iron Man 3 episode, because that was just a great. Honestly, I think some of our best content came when we were most antagonistic towards each other.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember the episode in particular, but I remember I don't remember the episode number or what we even discussed in the front half of the show. But whenever the Tom King stuff was breaking, and we had that like really long back half where we spent like an hour kind of going at each other over the merits of the Tom King Batman run and what it said about DC editorial, what was happening there. That might have been some of our best content we've ever provided, I think, because we both had valid viewpoints and we're just coming at it from a different perspective. And I thought it was fun. I don't know if anybody else did or found it useful, but I'll remember that. Like I said earlier, that Star Wars discussion we had a couple months ago was a lot of fun. We've if you want to drag it back all the way to the column days, man, that Spider-Man Unlimited column I read it like 3 months ago and it's still funny to me. And maybe it's just because it's made by us for us or for us by us or whatever the acronym is, but that's it. Like, I don't know.
No, I agree. I mean, if you want to go back to the columns, man, there were some doozies there. Hulk and the Agents of Smash.
Yeah.
That was a damn fine one. And when we're talking about podcasts, I believe we did this one in podcast form. Maybe it was. Do you remember if it was a column? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation.
That was a column.
That was a column. That was fun as hell. That
disembodied Splinterhead.
Just so much, and a lot of our roundtable discussions were the Halfies were always one of my favorite shows every year. Whichever Halfies it was, where Tim gave out awards for 1995 instead of the present day.
That was good stuff.
Was
Oh, and of
sensational.
course we would be remiss if we didn't mention, in true Greg and Nick fashion, a creative endeavor that was started and is unlikely to be ever finished. That is, of course, being comic book theater Watchmen.
Oh my gosh, yes. Thanks to everybody that participated in that. And that was, the most labor-intensive thing that we've done. I know Nick, all credit to Nick, because he did almost all the work on that.
And Todd.
And Todd as
Todd,
well. And
as always.
Todd in the editing booth, obviously.
Yeah.
But that was one of the most fun things that we've done. And certainly as far as the end result goes, one of the most hilarious things we've ever done. And, it honestly, it was a project that was never meant to be finished, really. Ultimately, wasn't destined to happen. It was a lot of effort, but by God, it was fun. And it's kind of funnier that it didn't finish, isn't it? I mean, kind of.
A little bit. It kind of fits in with the joke, I guess.
And so,
Listening to us trying to pass our laziness off as some, sense of irony or
yeah,
something.
it was really ironic humor, but, the first time that I really studied audio storytelling was in the Watchmen audio project. But no, it was a fun time with friends, and that's really ultimately, if you boil down what the Hard-Traveling Fanboys were, at least what we hope it was, a fun time among friends. And so we kind of got away from that for a while, and I'm glad we got to kind of swing it back around. And if we come back, that's what we want it to be again. And again, this is all with the caveat, unless there's some millionaire out there listening right now that wants to give us some money to bullshit about whatever you want us to bullshit about.
Yeah.
Even if
You
we don't
pick
have
the topic.
opinions on it, we'll make them up.
Nope. We'll make them up. Yep. I don't have strong feelings on asparagus, but I'll talk about it.
Hell yeah, I'll talk about asparagus. I mean, and whatever Nick says about it, I'll say the opposite. So,
There you go.
We'll have a hell of a show.
Rinse and repeat.
Yep. Next stop, profit. So, in the meantime, I just hope you guys have enjoyed the show. If you've listened to it in the past, go back. The archives are still there. We'll probably be back in some form, but there's no guarantee, obviously. So, for the time being, thank you for being our audience. Thank you for taking time out to listen to our overly sappy, overly up our own ass episode. But what better way to wrap up our show, right? I mean, burrowing a hole in our own innards and talking about how great we are.
Yeah, I mean, that is a great way to end the show. But I can think of one better, Greg.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we talked about a little while ago how I feel like the legacy of this show, for better or worse, is going to be JR singing the hits. And I thought there's no better way to end this than one last contribution from the man himself. And I think the song is as appropriate as any. So, Jim, if you're ready, take it away.
Well, I'd be remiss before I get started on this song here. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, Conrad and Greg, what a hell of a run.
Once more, I am not Conrad Thompson.
Listen, I may be deaf, I may be old, but I'm not blind. So, hell of a run for Hard-Traveling Fanboys. Much along the lines of the run the Midnights had against the Rock and Rolls back in Mid-South. Hell of a rivalry, drew a lot of money, did big business for a short period of time, and then faded out and it was over. And you can't go back to the well once it's over. We tried to bring JYD back at the end, didn't work out. He was done.
And WCW.
Well, Jim, you must be reminded that the Rock and Roll Express were NWA Tag Team Champions this year in 2020. So who's to say the Hard-Traveling Fanboys can't have a Ricky and Robert-like run?
Well, I'm to say it. Anyway, the song goes a little something like this. And now, the end is near. And so I face the gorilla position. My friends, I'll say it clear, and I'll state my case, for which I am certain. I've lived a life that is full. I've traveled each and every highway. And what's more, much more than this, I did it my my way. Regrets? Well, I've had a few now. No doubt about that. But then again, too few to mention. A couple of our early episodes, not the best. A couple of our later episodes, not the best. But nonetheless, I did what I had to do and saw it through without exemption. And I planned each charted course, each careful step along life's byway. And by the way, a Casper mattress will help you get through life's byway. And much more than this. By God, I did it my way. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you listeners knew, when the Hard-Traveling Fanboys bit off a little bit more than they could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up. And I spit it the hell out. I have faced it all, and I stood tall, and I did it my fucking way. You know, I've loved, and I've laughed. I cried, Connie. I've had my fill, my share of losing, and now, as the tears subside, I find it all so amusing just to think I did all that. And may I say, not in any kind of shy way. Oh no, not me. My ass did it my way. For what is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has not to say the things that he truly feels, and not the words of one who kneels. From Richard on the internet. The record shows I took the blows, the soup bone right hand, and did it my way. To say the things he truly feels, and not the words of one who kneels. The record shows I took the piston-like right hands and did it my, well, quite frankly, my, oh yeah, my way.
You are listening to the longest running weekly episodic comic book podcast in all Place to Be Nation.
Broadcasting from the state-of-the-art L-shaped studios at beautiful and serene Ho-Ho Loon Plaza in Vancouver, British Columbia. Greg Phillips and Nick Duke are the Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
When you hear this show, you better run for cover. Klondike Bill's a sausage lover.
I got a 10-inch kielbasa from Klondike Bill.
Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
Slobber.
It's a weekly podcast and you better listen. Keep your ears in mid-condition. Ooh, Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
I got a 33 and third chance of winning.
Hard-Traveling Fanboys, 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 Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
Got 2 weekly segments coming to your town. Reading, watching, and the rundown. Do.
Thank it.
It's the greatest show on Place to Be Nation. Certainly a unique situation. Ooh, hard-traveling fanboys.
Already their skittles.
Hard-traveling fanboys. 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 Hard-traveling fanboys.
You vicious little son of a bitch.
They're indivisible. They're microwavable.
Oh, Mr. Eddie.
Ooh, hard-traveling fanboy. Oi, 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 oi.
Are you gonna give me fucking anything on this show, or why are we even here?
Listen up, you slap dick. Let me answer the fucking question. Give me a minute.
Well, Klondike Bill told me that if he ever came across a woman who was extremely clean and well kept, he would tell her to put on a pair of sweatpants and a sweatshirt, go take a 2-mile jog, and then come back and see him when she was done.
I believe it was quite sudden and painful.
Hard-traveling fanboys, 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 hard-traveling fanboys.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Place to Be Nations, JT Rosero and Chad Campbell here. We want to let you know that we have over 24 podcasts available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlaceToBeNation.com. We now offer them to you on 2 great feeds. On the Place to Be Nation Wrestling feed, we dive into topics running the gamut from today's WWE to the glory days of yesteryear and the ins and outs of the territory days. In addition to our full-length shows, we also deliver to you special pod blasts on topics old and new.
The Place to Be Nation Pop feed is a veritable treasure trove of great content. Offered tremendous shows covering the land of movies, television, life, comics, and sports, brought to you by the most knowledgeable and insightful folks in the podcast world.
You can find all these great shows, plus archives of our past podcasts from over the past 8 years as well by subscribing to both feeds on iTunes. And while you're there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All of these shows, plus others, available on PlaceToBeNation.com, where we cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, plus in-depth search projects, and much more. Be sure to support our site by using www.PlaceToBeNation.com/Amazon when doing your online shopping. We want to thank our friends at Boneheads Wing Bar, ProWrestlingOnly.com, and TheHistoryOfWrestling.com as well. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. PlaceToBeNation.com, the only place to be in your pop